Let's get started with our first news. Dana White has been in constant talks with Conor lately, and he says it's been non-stop. According to Dana, Conor is absolutely dead serious about stepping back into the octagon and even pushing for a fight at the White House. People talk a lot about Conor, but Dana insists he knows the man better than most. He's been through the trenches with him, seen his battles, and understands his mindset. Dana recalls that Conor has fought while injured, taken fights on short notice, and even stepped in against opponents that were stylistically bad matchups. None of that mattered to him. He never cared about who was standing across from him. He just wanted to fight, to compete, to prove himself again and again. But as Dana pointed out, the real question is whether Conor truly cares enough right now to make a fight happen. When was the last time he actually fought? It's been a while, and that's what people keep wondering. But Dana makes it clear Conor is telling him directly, "I'm dead serious, I want this." He's training again, he's back in the testing pool, and he's putting in the work. That's a big statement, especially from someone who has already achieved so much yet still craves more. Dana emphasizes that it's not just empty words. He's had personal conversations with Conor, and the passion is still there. The fire is still inside him. This isn't about money anymore. This isn't about fame. It's about legacy. It's about that deep-rooted love for fighting that never leaves a true warrior. Dana believes Conor has that in his DNA. At the same time, Dana is realistic. He knows the process. February is still a long way off. There are a lot of moving pieces in putting together a big card, and nothing is set in stone yet. But the talks have been serious, the intentions are clear, and the excitement is building. Dana says we'll see how it plays out. He makes it sound simple, but the weight behind those words is heavy. If Conor really does follow through, if the talks turn into action, then the UFC might be gearing up for something truly historic. Dana's tone shows cautious optimism, but also belief. He's been around fighters long enough to know when someone is bluffing and when someone is truly ready for war. Right now, he's convinced Conor is in the latter category, and that's why these conversations have been so relentless, so non-stop. Before moving to the next news, we have one quick request for you. We're constantly working on improving our content to earn your love and support. That's why we'd truly appreciate it if you could take just a moment to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Move on to another news. Arman recently shared his thoughts on what could be next for Ilia, and his prediction raised plenty of eyebrows. He believes Ilia is far more likely to defend his belt against Paddy Pimblett than to step in with Justin Gaethje. Arman was very clear when he said no, Gaethje won't fight Ilia. That's my opinion. Of course the UFC can do whatever they want, but in my eyes Paddy is the more realistic option. He explained that the matchup makes more sense for Ilia's current position, and it could set up bigger opportunities down the line. Arman also pointed out what might happen if Islam defends his title. In his mind, Islam would almost certainly move up to 170, chasing history and aiming to become a triple champion. That kind of move would naturally draw Ilia's attention, because a fight with Islam would not only bring massive money, but also a chance to make history. Arman doesn't believe Ilia would choose to fight him if that scenario is available. Why would he? The payday against Islam would be bigger, and the stakes would be higher. Arman explained further, saying that even if Ilia lost to Islam, he would still have the built-in excuse of moving up 2 full weight classes. He could easily drop back down afterward, still holding his place as champion, and the loss wouldn't damage his legacy as much. In fact, it might even add to his reputation as a fighter willing to take huge risks for greatness. That's why Arman insists the Pimblett fight is more likely than a Gaethje matchup. It's the safer path while Ilia keeps his eyes on the long-term prize. Meanwhile, Arman has his own business to handle. He's set to grapple with Benson Henderson tomorrow, and today the two had their official face-off. It was a tense but respectful moment, showing that both men are ready for what's coming. Cameras were rolling, and at one point Arman even joked, asking, "You were filming me here or what?" The lighthearted side of him came through, but you could still feel the focus in his voice. As the moment wrapped up, he simply thanked everyone around him. "Thank you, bro. Thank you." The respect was clear, but underneath it all, Arman's mind is sharp, already analyzing the division, already looking ahead at what Ilia and others might do next. The confidence in his words shows he's ready for whatever comes his way. Move on to another news. Daniel Cormier has made it clear he does not believe Ilia would stand much of a chance in a boxing ring against Terence Crawford. DC respects Ilia's skills and everything he has accomplished inside the octagon, but when it comes to boxing, he feels Crawford is simply on another level. After watching Crawford's performance against Canelo Alvarez, DC cannot imagine an MMA fighter crossing over and beating him in his own sport. To him, that victory alone showed just how elite Crawford truly is. Cormier explained that every time Crawford even mentions Ilia's name, Ilia benefits. Every single time there is an exchange, whether Crawford is addressing him directly or just reacting, Ilia moves one step closer to what he ultimately wants. The attention, the buzz, and the possibility of a crossover event all grow stronger, but DC was firm when he said, should Ilia fight Crawford in a boxing match? No. He just doesn't believe Ilia could handle what Crawford brings inside the ring. Still, Cormier admitted something important. He has doubted Ilia before, and Ilia has consistently gone beyond expectations. Inside the UFC cage, Ilia has proven people wrong over and over again. He's exceeded what many thought he was capable of, showing the kind of grit and determination that makes him a champion. But boxing is a completely different game. DC pointed out that Crawford has spent his entire life doing nothing but boxing, mastering every detail, every nuance. Meanwhile, MMA fighters have to divide their time between multiple disciplines: striking, grappling, wrestling, submissions, and everything in between. That's why historically we haven't seen an MMA fighter step over to boxing and dominate at the championship level. They may perform well, they may even surprise people, but they don't become world champions in that space. Cormier brought up something a Dagestani fighter once told him. He said the reason fighters from certain parts of the world are winning now is because they have no choice. Fighting is their only way to change their lives. In America or other countries, athletes may have options, but in places like Dagestan, it's fight or nothing. That same principle applies to Crawford. Growing up in Omaha, he didn't have many options. Boxing wasn't just a sport for him, it was his lifeline. He had to make it work, and he did. That's why he is who he is today. A pound-for-pound great and one of the most disciplined boxers alive. Cormier doesn't even know if this fight will ever happen, but he stressed one key point. Every time Ilia and Crawford mention each other, it's a win for Ilia. The more he keeps Crawford's name in the conversation, the better. Cormier said if he were Ilia, he wouldn't stop. He wouldn't relent. He would continue to say Crawford's name, continue to push for that fight, even if it's just talk right now. Especially when Ilia's next UFC fight is announced. That's the perfect time to promote both the fight in front of him and the idea of a future boxing super fight. According to DC, this is smart business. It's about planting seeds, keeping eyes on Ilia, and letting the fans dream about something massive. And interestingly, TJ Dillashaw is also on the same page, agreeing that Ilia should keep pushing this narrative. For Ilia, it may not be about winning against Crawford in the ring, but about building his star power and keeping his name tied to one of the biggest boxers in the world. Move on to another news. Dana White is facing some heavy criticism from the MMA community, and it all started with comments made by Matt Brown. He spoke out about Dana stepping deeper into boxing and raised serious concerns about how the UFC operates. According to Brown, the biggest issue is that the UFC has essentially monopolized the sport. He pointed to situations where fighters are left begging, whether it's for opportunities or bonuses. He mentioned seeing Carlos Prates pleading for his friend to get a shot in the UFC, and he admitted he himself had been guilty of begging for that $50,000 bonus. Please, master, is how he described it, and he said bluntly that's not how it's supposed to work. Brown explained that in boxing, fighters don't have to beg promoters. The reason for that is the Ali Act, which gives boxers protection. In his words, the UFC isn't just ignoring the Ali Act, they're actively trying to revise it, which in reality means destroy it. He warned fans that this won't be a good thing for fighters, even if some think otherwise. When a single entity controls rankings, titles, and paydays, Brown argued, it creates an unfair monopoly. He broke it down further. Sure, UFC fighters can make millions, but when you're making $10 million while someone else is making $100 million off of your work, that's not truly good money. That's the core of the problem. Dana has often said, this is not a career, this is an opportunity. Brown looked back on that statement and called it completely wrong. In his mind, fighting in the UFC should absolutely be a career. If a fighter is good enough, they should be able to retire comfortably from the money they earn inside the cage. Brown also criticized Dana's famous line, "You eat what you kill." He called it farcical. Fighters don't actually eat what they kill, they eat what the UFC decides to give them. He used Conor as the perfect example. If Conor sells 5 million pay-per-views, he doesn't get what he killed. He promotes the event, does endless media, hypes the fight like nobody else, but in the end he might only see $10 million, while the UFC pockets $80 to $100 million. That's not eating what you kill. That's Dana eating what you killed. MAfighting.com posted Matt Brown's statement on Instagram, and it immediately gained traction among fighters. Both current and former UFC stars reacted. Sean Strickland, Aljamain Sterling, Jorge Masvidal, and Bobby Green all liked the post. Francis Ngannou also showed support. Sterling went further, dropping 100 emojis in agreement. Other fighters chimed in as well. Jan Shayonen said Brown always keeps it real. Tito Ortiz claimed he's been saying this for decades. Anthony Taylor wrote, "Preach," and Saja Eubanks responded with clapping emojis. The response shows just how many fighters, past and present, share the same frustrations. Dana's model has built the UFC into a powerhouse, but at the same time it's leaving fighters feeling controlled, underpaid, and undervalued. Brown's words cut deep because they reflect what many fighters have been quietly saying for years, and this time the reaction proves the message hit hard. Move on to another news. Dana White has officially canceled the UFC Perth co-main event, and it comes as a major disappointment with the card just days away. Earlier today, news broke that the highly anticipated matchup between Junior Tafa and Ewell Allen is off due to injury. The update came directly from Allen himself, who took to Instagram to confirm the unfortunate news. In his post, he explained that Tafa had suffered an injury and was forced to withdraw from the fight. He kept his response respectful, writing, "My opponent pulled out of the fight because of an injury. The fight will not happen. Get well soon, boy. We have to rebook this fight." That message made it clear that there's no bad blood between the two fighters, but it still leaves a big hole in the UFC Perth lineup. The co-main was shaping up to be a heavy-hitting clash, and fans were expecting fireworks. Now, with no time to find a proper replacement, the UFC has been forced to shuffle things around. Unfortunately, there wasn't a backup fighter available for Olan, and the organization had to make some quick changes. The revised lineup now has Jimmy Crute stepping into the co-main spot against Ivan Ursel. That fight, while still exciting, wasn't originally slated to have co-main billing, but given the circumstances, it's been elevated to a much bigger stage. Following that, the main event remains Dominic Reyes versus Carlos Ulberg, which will now carry even more weight with the reshuffled card. For Tafa, this setback is undoubtedly frustrating. He had the chance to showcase his power in front of the Australian fans, and this fight could have been a major moment for his career. Injuries, however, are part of the fight game, and as much as fans hate to see it, these situations happen often. Olan's message shows that the two will likely meet again once Tafa is cleared, and when that day comes, it should be just as anticipated as it was for Perth. For now, fans will have to adjust to the new lineup. The UFC Perth card is still stacked with talent, and fights like Crute vs Ursel and Reyes vs Ulberg promise plenty of action, but losing the co-main event just days before the show is a tough blow. Dana and the UFC made the call to cancel, and it reminds everyone that nothing in this sport is guaranteed until fighters step inside the octagon. The drama, the unpredictability, and the chaos of MMA are what keep fans hooked, and even with this change, UFC Perth remains a must-watch event. Move on to another news. Merab has made it very clear where his loyalty stands heading into the upcoming bantamweight matchup. He openly admitted that he is hoping Mario Bautista gets the job done against Umar. In fact, Merab went as far as to say that if Bautista wins, he will gladly fight him next because in his eyes, Bautista is the one who actually deserves that opportunity. Merab didn't hold back when talking about the situation. He said, "I hope Bautista whoops Omar's, and I will fight Bautista next. He's more deserving." He then added a sharp dig, pointing out that Bautista doesn't have the advantage of being related to Khabib. According to Merab, that's why Bautista would need to string together a 9-fight win streak before even being considered for a title shot, while others seem to get that chance much quicker. He highlighted what he sees as a double standard in how the UFC gives title opportunities, especially when family ties or big names are involved. Merab also spoke about how frustrating it can be to see certain fighters get fast-tracked. He explained that some athletes receive a title fight after just 6 wins, even if those victories came against opponents who weren't even ranked. Meanwhile, others like Bautista have to keep fighting the toughest competition without being guaranteed anything. For Merab, this is not just about Bautista but about fairness in the sport. He believes the UFC should treat everyone equally and that every fighter should have to earn their shot the hard way. Dana White has often defended the matchmaking process, saying that it's about timing, opportunities, and what makes sense for the business. But fighters like Merab see it differently. They feel that favoritism and marketability play too big of a role, leaving hard-working contenders overlooked. Merab's comments reflect that frustration, and they resonate with many fighters who feel they've been forced to climb a much steeper hill. At the same time, Merab knows that Bautista still has a massive challenge in front of him. Umar is undefeated, highly skilled, and comes from one of the most respected fight camps in the world. But Merab's point is simple: if Bautista manages to pull off the upset, it should mean something. It should put him in a position where he's recognized as a legitimate contender, and Merab is already raising his hand saying he's willing to meet him in the octagon right after. His words also serve as a not-so-subtle shot at Umar. By openly cheering for Bautista, Merab is making it clear that he doesn't want to see Umar fast-track to a title shot just because of his last name or his connections. He wants the spotlight on fighters who earn their place, not those who are given it. With these comments, Merab has once again shown that he's not afraid to speak his mind. He stands for merit over favoritism, hard work over hype, and fairness over politics. Whether or not Bautista actually wins, Merab's message is loud and clear. The UFC should reward fighters based on what they accomplish inside the cage, not on who their family is.